He trusted him with his life. But what Ibrahim Traoré just discovered shook the entire nation. A wealthy American millionaire secretly paid his own bodyguard $5 million to betray him. What Traoré did next wasn't just fearless. It was a message to the world. This story will leave you speechless. It was a quiet morning in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traoré, sitting in his office in the presidential palace, reviewed important documents on advances in local policies. The country was undergoing a significant transformation under his leadership, but he knew that not everyone viewed his initiatives favorably. Suddenly, Marie, his longtime social worker, rushed into the room, holding a sealed envelope in her hands. His face was tense, and his eyes reflected concern. "Mr. President," she said, her voice shaking, "this arrived just a few minutes ago. It's urgent." Traoré frowned when he received the envelope. He carefully opened it and found a series of documents detailing a shocking offer. An American millionaire had offered $5 million for his own bodyguard, someone he trusted deeply, to betray him. "That's unbelievable," muttered Traoré, flipping through the pages. The evidence was clear: encrypted messages, deposits into offshore accounts, and even recordings of secret conversations. Marie approached the table hesitantly. "What are we going to do, sir? This could put your safety at risk." Traoré took a deep breath, trying to process the situation. He knew this was more than a personal attack. It was an attempt to destabilize his leadership and compromise Burkina Faso's progress. "First," he said calmly, "we need to identify who is behind this." "An American millionaire, you say?" Marie nodded. "Yes, sir. The documents mention the name of Richard Harrove, a businessman known for his aggressive investment practices and political influence in the United States." Traoré slowly shook his head. "He must have an interest in our policies of rejecting conditional foreign aid. He probably wants to see me out of the way of facilitating lucrative deals for American companies." Meanwhile, in the military barracks, where his bodyguard Moussa was on duty, the news began to circulate quickly among the officers. Moussa, a loyal man who had served Traoré since the beginning of his leadership, was called to the command room. "Are you aware of what's going on?" asked one of the generals, handing him a copy of the documents. Moussa turned pale as he read the pages. He had never spoken about the bribery attempts he had received, but now he realized that the case had been exposed. "I would never do that," Moussa said, his voice firm but emotional. "I would never betray President Traoré. He is more than a leader to me. He is a brother." The officers exchanged glances, some still suspicious. Moussa knew he had to prove his loyalty somehow. Ibrahim Traoré decided to confront Moussa personally. He knew this was a delicate situation and that he needed to handle it carefully. Traoré didn't want to make hasty decisions, but he also couldn't ignore the evidence that had reached him. Moussa was called to the presidential palace late in the afternoon. He entered the meeting room with hesitant steps, immediately noticing the seriousness in the air. Traoré sat at the head of the table, surrounded by some of his closest aides, including Marie. Moussa Traoré began, his voice calm but firm. "Do you know why you are here?" The bodyguard swallowed hard before responding. "Yes, Mr. President, according to the documents that arrived." Traoré nodded slowly. "These documents show that you received a substantial offer from an American millionaire to betray me." Moussa lowered his head, visibly shaken. "Mr. President, I swear on my life that I never considered accepting this offer. I am loyal to you, to our people, and to our cause." Marie intervened, her voice soft but direct. "Then why didn't you report this as soon as the offer was made, Moussa? Why hide something so serious?" Moussa looked up, clearly moved. I was afraid that even without having betrayed, my loyalty might be questioned. And I didn't want to put more pressure on you, Mr. President, in the midst of everything you're already facing." Traoré watched Moussa for a long moment, analyzing his words and his expression. He had known that man for years and had always trusted him, but now, faced with concrete evidence, he needed to decide whether that confidence was still justified. "I understand your fear, Moussa," Traoré said finally. "But remember, the truth is always the best way to deal with any situation. hiding something. Like this only creates more distrust. Musa nodded, his hand shaking as he held the hat he carried with him. I understand, Mr. President, and I apologize for not acting more transparently. Traoré got up from his chair and walked over to Musa, placing a hand on his shoulder. You are more than a bodyguard to me, Musa. You are a brother, and I know your loyalty is true. But from now on, we need to make sure situations like this never happen again. Musa looked at Traoré, tears streaming down his face. I swear, Mr. President, I will never hide anything from you again. My life is in your hands. Traoré smiled slightly, offering a gesture of support. Your life is in your hands, Musa. We will continue together, but with more transparency between us. The aides in the room remained silent, impressed by the way Trey had handled the situation. He not only remained calm, but also turned a tense moment into an opportunity to build trust within his team. In the days following the discovery of the plot, Ibrahim Traoré decided to act strategically. He knew that simply ignoring Richard Harov, the American millionaire behind the bribery attempt, would not solve the problem. It was necessary to face him directly, exposing his intentions to the world. Traoré called an emergency meeting with his intelligence and communications team. Marie was present, as was Musa, who was now working even more closely with the president to prove his loyalty. Mr. President, said one of the security advisors, we have enough evidence to publicly expose Harov's actions, but we need to decide how we are going to do this. Traoré reflected for a moment before responding. We can't just release the documents, he said. We need to turn this situation into an opportunity to strengthen our international position. Marie intervened, suggesting an innovative approach. What if we use this to highlight our self-reliance policies? We can show the world that we are being targeted because our initiatives are threatening to outside interests. Traoré nodded, impressed by the idea. Exactly, he said. We will use this exhibition to reinforce our message of sovereignty and dignity. Meanwhile, in the United States, Richard Harov was in his New York office following developments in Burkina Faso. He had underestimated Traoré's ability to uncover his plot and now feared the consequences. Mr. Hargrove, said his assistant, rushing into the room. It seems that Traoré knows everything and he is planning something big. Harov frowned, visibly irritated. What do you mean, something big? He's organizing an international press conference, the assistant explained, and it looks like you're going to lay out your offer. Harov stood up from his chair nervously. He knew that exposure could ruin his global reputation. Do something, he ordered. Offer more money. Do whatever it takes to silence them. But it was too late. Traoré had already prepared his move. Ibrahim Traoré knew that exposing Richard Harov's plot could not just be an act of denunciation. He needed to turn that moment into an opportunity to reinforce the values that guided his leadership: dignity, sovereignty, and self-sufficiency. On the day scheduled for the press conference, the presidential palace auditorium was packed. Journalists around the world waited anxiously to hear how Traoré would respond to the attack orchestrated by Harov. When he took the stage, wearing his traditional Burkina Bay clothes, the room fell silent. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice calm but firm. Today we are here not just to discuss an attempted bribery, but to reflect on something much larger, the fight for the dignity of a people. Traoré projected onto the screen documents detailing the offers made to Musa, as well as Harov's financial connections with companies seeking to exploit natural resources in Burkina Faso. This attempt to destabilize us, he said, pointing to the evidence on the screen, is not just against me. It is against every man, woman, and child who believes we can build our own future without depending on outside interests. The audience was completely silent. Absorbing the gravity of the words, Traoré continued, his voice gaining strength. But we want to make something clear. Burkina Faso will not be intimidated. Our strength lies in the small daily victories, in the communities that come together to build something bigger than themselves. He then announced a surprise initiative, the Foreign Exploitation Resistance Fund. The fund would be fueled by local resources and international partnerships based on mutual respect, designed to protect the country against predatory investments. This fund explained, Traoré is not just a response to Harov. It is a statement that we are ready to face any threat that compromises our sovereignty. The statement was met with enthusiastic applause, especially from the African journalists present. Hashtags such as Resistencia BF and Dignidad Siem Fidedo began to circulate widely on social media, highlighting the importance of public policies centered on human dignity. Meanwhile, in the United States, Richard Harov watched the live broadcast with growing frustration. During a meeting with his advisors, he admitted that he had underestimated Traoré. This man is not just defending his country, said Harov, visibly angry. He is building something that can inspire other African leaders to follow the same path. Back in Burkina Faso, Traoré continued his mission to strengthen trust within his team. He promoted Moussa to a position even closer to his personal security, publicly demonstrating that loyalty was rewarded. Moussa, he said during a private year ceremony, your courage in facing this situation proves that you are more than a bodyguard. You are an example for us all. An emotional Moussa vowed to continue dedicating his life to protecting the president and the values he represented. In the days following the press conference that exposed Richard Harov's bribery attempts, Moussa was determined to prove his loyalty, not only to President Traoré, but also to the people of Burkina Faso. He knew that his future actions would be crucial to completely restoring confidence in his integrity. Moussa began working tirelessly, not only protecting Traoré, but also becoming directly involved in the local initiatives that the president had implemented. He began to closely monitor agricultural projects, visiting rural villages to ensure that the benefiting families were receiving the necessary support. I'm more than a bodyguard, Moussa told Marie during one of these trips. I want to be part of the change we are building. Marie smiled, impressed by Moussa's transformation. You're already proving that, Moussa. People see your dedication. In a small village called Kaya, Moussa met a young farmer called Fatou, who had been one of the first beneficiaries of land reform. She now led a group of women who grew vegetables to sell at the local market. Mr. Moussa, said Fatou, handing him a basket of tomatoes as a gesture of gratitude. Thanks to President Traoré, we have a new life, and thanks to you, we feel safe to move forward. Moussa was deeply moved by her words. He realized that his mission went far beyond protecting one person. He was helping to protect a dream shared by millions. Meanwhile, Richard Harov continued to suffer the consequences of his public exposure. In the United States, its business practices began to be investigated following the global repercussion of the case. During a forced interview, he tried to downplay the incident. It was just an offer, he said, visibly uncomfortable. Nothing happened after all. But the public did not accept his apology. Hashtags like Harov exposed your character and ABF resistance dominated social media, highlighting the importance of leaders who defend their people against predatory interests. Back in Burkina Faso, Traoré observed everything with a mixture of pride and caution. He knew that the fight against external influences would not end so easily. But he also knew that each victory further strengthened the spirit of resistance of his people. During a visit to a newly renovated rural school, Traoré encountered a child named Madou who had written him a letter. Mr. President, Madou said, handing him the letter with shaking hands, I wanted to tell you that I want to be like you when I grow up, someone who protects people and does what is right. Traoré smiled, moved. He hugged Madou and promised he would do everything in his power to ensure the boy had the tools he needed to achieve his dreams. The scene was widely publicized on social media, further reinforcing Traoré's image as a leader committed to the future of his country. Meanwhile, Moussa continued his journey of redemption, inspiring others to follow his example. He knew his loyalty would be tested again, but he was ready to face any challenge for the cause he believed in. Fatou walked slowly towards the Innovation Center, his heart torn between worry and determination. She had traveled hours from Bobo Dioulasso, carrying with her not only her suitcase, but also the memories of her mother, Marie, who always dreamed of seeing her daughter achieve something greater. Upon arriving, she found a scene she had never imagined. A crowd gathered to celebrate the advances of the Dignity Through Self-Sufficiency program. Marie was there just as Traoré had described, tears streaming down her face as she coordinated the final details of the ceremony. Malik, the boy who had once fought a fever in a makeshift hospital, now wore a new sweater and smiled beside her, holding a board with photos of local initiatives. Ibrahim Traoré took the stage simply wearing traditional Burkina Faso clothes. He looked at the crowd, visibly moved to see so many lives transformed by the project. Today, he said, his voice thick with emotion, we are not here just to celebrate numbers or public policies. We are here to honor those who built this country, with their hands and minds. You are the true pillars of Burkina Faso. The audience applauded warmly while tears ran down the faces of many present. Fatou was invited on stage to speak. She hesitated for a moment before finding the courage. My mother always taught me that we should fight for our dreams, she said, holding an old book that had belonged to her mother. Inside it, a simple sentence was written. Knowledge is the greatest inheritance we can leave. Traoré smiled, deeply touched by the message. He knew this was more than just a memory. It was a reminder that every act of kindness could create big changes. During the official speech, Traoré spoke directly to the hearts of everyone present. Today, he began, his voice echoing through the packed auditorium. We are not here just to celebrate numbers or public policies. We are here to honor those who built this country with their hands and minds. You are the true pillars of Burkina Faso. He then addressed Richard Harrove directly, even though he knew the American millionaire was not present. Mr. Harrove, he said, looking directly into the cameras, you called me naive, but I want you to know that our naivety is changing lives. Our strength is in the small daily victories in the communities that come together to build a better future. The audience applauded warmly as images of flourishing, farmers, children studying in renovated schools, and young scientists developing innovative solutions were projected on the screen. Fatou was invited on stage to speak. She hesitated for a moment before finding the courage. My mother always taught me that we should fight for our dreams, she said, holding her mother's book. And today, thanks to this center, I know I can achieve hers too. I want to use what I learned to help my people grow more food and take better care of the land. The crowd erupted in applause and Traoré hugged Fatou affectionately. He knew that this was the true measure of the project's success, inspiring the next generations to value their land and their future. Observing the scene, a journalist wrote, in his notebook, Today in Burkina Faso, I saw the future of an Africa that values its history, honors its heroes, and builds bridges of dignity for all. Meanwhile, in the United States, Trump watched the live broadcast with growing, if reluctant, admiration. During a live interview, he was asked again about Traoré. This guy is something special, Trump admitted, surprising the audience. He's proving he can do things on his own. Maybe I underestimated him. Trump's statement was widely publicized, further reinforcing the message that gestures of kindness and genuine leadership can unite people from different parts of the world. Back in Burkina Faso, Traoré continued his mission of transformation. During a visit to a small rural village, he met a child named Mamadou, who had received school uniforms and supplies thanks to resources generated by land reform. Mr. President, she said, her voice shaking with emotion, this is for you. I wanted to show you that we are using what we have been given to learn. Traoré smiled, deeply touched. You don't just owe it to us, Mamadou. You're proving that when we give people the right tools, they can conquer the world. Power doesn't just attract loyalty, it also attracts danger. And for Captain Ibrahim Traoré, one of Africa's boldest and most watched leaders, that danger came in the most painful form, betrayal from within. But what made this betrayal even more shocking was its source, an American millionaire operating from the shadows, willing to pay $5 million to dismantle a movement that has been inspiring millions. It started with whispers, unusual movements, a shift in tone from a man Traoré had long trusted, a bodyguard who had stood by his side through crisis, threats, and political chaos. At first, it seemed like stress, but Traoré's instincts never failed him. He authorized a quiet investigation, one that peeled back the layers of silence and uncovered a plot that stunned even the most hardened security officials. The facts were undeniable. A high-level American financier, with deep political connections and business interests threatened by Traoré's nationalist stance, had wired $5 million to an offshore account linked directly to the Bodyguard. The instructions were chillingly clear: create vulnerability, leave an opening, and eliminate the resistance by any means necessary. But the plot failed. Because Ibrahim Traoré didn't just prepare for external threats, he trained his circle to recognize internal corruption before it strikes. His intelligence team intercepted the communications, froze the funds, and apprehended the Bodyguard before the betrayal could take place. When the news broke, the nation reacted with disbelief, then fury, then overwhelming support. And Traoré, instead of responding with rage, chose clarity. He addressed the public with calm determination, exposing the entire scheme not just to condemn the act, but to educate his people. He spoke of the real war, not just the war over territory, but the war over Africa's independence. The war waged by money, manipulation, and power-hungry outsiders who fear a continent that rises on its own terms. They can send their millions, he said, but they will never buy the soul of Burkina Faso. He ordered sweeping reforms to tighten internal security, launched new transparency protocols, and called on African leaders to protect not only their borders, but the hearts of their institutions. If they can buy one man, he warned, they will try to buy more. We must stay awake. Social media lit up. Hashtags trended. People from every walk of life praised his wisdom, his composure, and his unwavering stance against foreign interference. Traoré didn't just survive the betrayal, he turned it into a lesson, a shield, and a sword. Because in that moment, the world saw something bigger than a president. They saw a man who cannot be bought, a leader who doesn't flinch when millions are placed on the table, a warrior who stands taller when threatened from the inside. Ibrahim Traoré's message was clear. Africa's future will not be decided in boardrooms abroad. It will be protected, defended, and built by Africans who know the cost of freedom and choose to pay it every day.